Hey, good morning, and welcome to our NetSuite Simplified webinar series. This is with goVirtualOffice, and it's where we take one topic each month about NetSuite and break it down. We talk about how to approach it. We talk about all these different elements and give you a little bit more background so you can better utilize your NetSuite environment. So I've got two really great experts on the call with me today. We're going to be talking about one less click. So it's all about development in NetSuite and customization. And there's a lot of things that we're going to talk about today about how do we approach development, things to be considered when it comes to fear around that customization term when it comes to ERPs. And we're going to talk about the flexibility of NetSuite and what you guys can utilize. So that one less click theme is all about taking those small changes, those maybe mundane or routine activities that your team has to do, and how do we automate them, right? How do we take time out of their day and get you some of that ROI? So that's the topic for today. What I would ask as we go through this webinar that interact with us. We've got a really nice GoToWebinar application here that you can post questions. You can even post scenarios and ideas that you may have. Because of the two team members I've got on the call with me, we're going to be able to take some of those scenarios and talk about them at the end. So we'll come back to those. And before I jump into introductions here, I am going to talk really quick about what we spoke about last month. So last month's topic was demand planning simplified. So if you potentially missed out on that, or you have someone in your business that you feel would be able to take advantage of that information, reach out to us at NetSuite Simplified at goVirtualOffice.com. That's NetSuite Simplified at goVirtualOffice.com. And we'll send you that webinar. You'll be able to see the video and watch it on your own time. And that was done by two of our senior business consultants, Renee and Jamie, two really great experts within demand planning. So definitely take advantage of that if you missed out. All right, so for introductions, I'm going to start real quick. For those that have been on webinars, you may recognize my face. I'm Mark Miller. I'm the Professional Services Manager at goVirtualOffice. I have about 8 years of NetSuite specific experience doing implementations, a lot of different customization projects myself, large and small. And now I'm supporting the client success team and our application teams. So a lot of experience through myself as well. And I'll hand it off to Jared to introduce himself.
All right, thank you, Mark. Good morning, everybody. Just a few things about myself. I'm currently the managing partner at goVirtualOffice. Although I've worn a lot of hats throughout my career at goVirtualOffice and prior, I'm really a developer by trade, which is why I'm on this phone call today. I get to talk a little bit about the technical aspects of NetSuite and ERP systems and customization. My career has been 20 plus years of developing business systems, customizing ERP systems. I spent early in my career, I was a consultant with Microsoft, at that time, Great Plains Dynamics as a developer, spent some time in a manufacturing environment, and for the last 10 years I've been doing customizations and working in and around NetSuite, but a lot of experience in and around ERP, and again, I've worn every hat there is in IT and development. So looking forward to sharing with you some topics today and answering questions towards the end as well.
Thanks, Jared. Hello, everyone. Thanks for joining us today, as Jared mentioned. My name is Terry Nelson. I'm a senior business consultant here at goVirtualOffice. A bit about me, I've been with GVO for just over 1 year. Prior to that, I spent the majority of my career in the marketing and sales space. I started out my career, spent my formative years, so to speak, at Land's End, leading e-commerce and marketing functions there in both the B2C and B2B spaces for that organization. From there, I did the startup thing with a group of coworkers. This experience really helped me realize my passion for small business and small business models and really helping small businesses succeed. I still find myself on that path some 15 years later. After that, I went the consulting route for a few years. That's where I met goVirtualOffice and was introduced to NetSuite. Really impressed with how goVirtual approached their projects. The team was great. And I could really see the promise in NetSuite for small to mid-sized businesses, and I wanted to be part of that. Lastly, yes, I'm a Viking fan. I'm a Minnesota Viking fan in Packer country, which is difficult in most years, especially this year. Although I did thoroughly enjoy Sunday's outcome of the game at Lambeau. With that, I'm going to pass it back to Mark, who's definitely not a Viking fan.
Yeah, and we tried to ask Terry to not mention anything in regards to the Vikings, but he just felt like he had to. So apologies for any of those Packers fans as we're still mourning. All right, well, let's talk about GVO real quick. So I'm going to just go over some basics for those that are joining the webinar for the first time and maybe don't know anything about us. And then I'm going to pass it back to Jared, where he's going to take it forward into the core topic. So goVirtualOffice, who are we? We are a top NetSuite provider. So we do NetSuite implementations. We do all different types of projects. You can see here on the slide, there's 100+ implementations, 700+ projects. So we have seen a lot of different industries and functional areas in NetSuite that we've got experience in. We've got, now it's up to, I think, 40+ certifications. We were Partner of the Year for Suite Success in 2019. We've done quite a bit of work, and we've been doing it for about 15 years. So we're very experienced, and we love to share that. That's why we do these webinars. We want to pass on some of that knowledge. So some of the things that make, well, I guess I should say one of the things that makes GVO so great is our team. And so I'm going to talk a little bit about that. You'll notice that we have a little bit of a Midwest flair. It is who we are. We can't really pull it out sometimes. It is just part of who we are. So in terms of the team, each one of our clients gets a lot of support. So they get the client success team support. So every client is assigned a senior business consultant like Terry, someone who's got decades of industry experience and also contains NetSuite experience to guide them in their strategic plans. So how do you take those business strategies and look towards NetSuite and say, how do we use NetSuite to accomplish those? How can that be part of our execution plan? So that's what the senior business consultant does. The execution teams are the ones that are in the detail. They know a lot about NetSuite. They have a wide range of knowledge when it comes to all the different functional areas, whether it's order to cash, procure to pay, et cetera. A lot of great knowledge. So they're in the details. They're the ones implementing. They're the ones helping you advance your system. And then they're supported by what's kind of the core topic for today, data and development, mostly development today, all of development. And development team, we have 10+ developers that have been working through Jared for many years and have done very complex, very large customizations to very small customizations using all the different variations of the different suite script options that are out there. So we'll talk a little bit more about that, but great support to our execution teams. You know, NetSuite is known for its flexibility, and that's on purpose, right? So you can take it and you can extend it using development as needed. So with that, what I'm going to do is I'm going to pass it back to Jared, who's going to talk about some of the aspects of fear that we often hear in terms of customizing your ERP and NetSuite specifically.
All right, thank you, Mark. So when we talked about having a webinar on development, obviously the developer and me wanted to just pull up a bunch of code and walk all of you through lines of code, but we decided that probably wasn't appropriate. But as I kind of thought about my career and all the implementations I've seen both at GVO and prior with NetSuite and with other systems, one of the trends I've seen in the last several years is there's become this fear around customization. And I think it really stems from the inflexibility of a lot of ERP systems that are out there. And what I've seen is companies that I talk to, you know, say things like, well, if I customize, it's going to increase my maintenance costs. If I customize it, it will lock me out of upgrades and I'll become version locked. I had that with my last system and I don't want that again. You know, companies are worried about the staff they would need to support customizations. They worry about, you know, will I still be able to use other third-party add-ons, and will I still be able to, you know, integrate with my other applications? And there's a lot of fear around it. And as a developer, and kind of knowing NetSuite in and out, and also knowing the platform, I see a lot of missed opportunity. Okay, and so what we wanted to do today is walk you through some examples, and as we walk through some real life examples, I want to hit on some of the core tenets of development, especially the way we develop at GVO, that really mitigate and can really reduce the fears that are out there around customization. And hopefully we'll demonstrate that even with some small customizations, you can continually upgrade, and you don't have to worry about the maintenance costs, but you can get some quick ROI and some really good benefits out of just a little bit of customization work. So that's our goal today. So with that, our agenda for today is, first off, we're going to go through 3 different client examples. Terry's going to walk you through some of the background of these examples, and then I'll hit on kind of our approach to the solution, and hit on key tenets of what we used in the solution and why, and kind of give you some guiding principles of customizing in NetSuite. And then last but not least, Mark's going to take you through our GVO approach. So if you are interested in customizing your system and want to use GVO to help do that, Mark will walk you through what our proven process is. And then last but not least, we're going to try to move through this pretty quickly so we can leave a lot of time for Q&A. You've got Terry with lots of business experience over the years. I've got lots of technical experience. So we're pretty confident we can answer questions and guide you through anything you're curious about in and around development customization. So with that, I'm going to hand it over to Terry, and we'll dig into some client examples.
Thanks, Jared. So lots of years of experience. Is that the same as saying that I'm old? So for today's webinar, we thought about different ways to share the work we've done for our clients or on behalf of our clients, really to demonstrate that breadth and depth of work that Jared alluded to. So, you know, for today's webinar, we really kind of thought about ways to do that, and we decided to land on 3 examples. We chose 3 examples that demonstrate the flexibility of NetSuite, but might also have applicability to your business. So with that, let's just jump right into it. So in terms of, for this portion of the webinar, as Jared had mentioned, we wanted to share some actual examples of work that we've done. We do understand the anxiety and the apprehension around customization. Customization can conjure up some fears, but hopefully over the course of the next 30 minutes or so, we can help alleviate some of that anxiety. We're going to focus on 3 examples today. These examples might not apply directly to your business, but hopefully they will illustrate the flexibility of that's available to you in NetSuite, and how you too can take advantage of one less click. This might be a bit of marketing speak, and I'll probably be in trouble for saying it, but if you can define what you're looking to do, we can probably get it done. The 3 examples we're going to cover today demonstrate that flexibility I mentioned in NetSuite. First, how to create data on your records to improve the customer experience and eliminate manual work. Second, how to use configuration and simple scripting to save time and improve processes and efficiencies. And then lastly, how to leverage NetSuite to ensure all your customer-facing documents and information is on brand and are value add to the overall customer experience. For each example, we're going to provide some background on the project, as Jared alluded to, kind of the why, the how, and the what. The why is the idea. This typically comes from you or somebody on your team. It really starts with the question of, if I could only do this, or if this bit of data only existed on this record, or why can't NetSuite do this? Then Jared will talk about the how, the solution, share some examples with you, kind of a virtual peek behind the curtains. And then lastly, I'll review the results. What are the benefits to the client? So with that, let's get into our first example. Our first example is some work we did for INX Commercial Cleaning based in California. INX has been a longtime client of goVirtualOffice with us since 2013. If you're in and around the Monterey, California, Monterey Park area and looking for cleaning services, I encourage you to reach out to them. Some really good folks there. This one also reminds me a lot of my time at Lands' End, where I ran marketing and e-commerce for Lands' End Business Outfitters, which is the B2B arm of the company at the time. We had tens of thousands of customers, and it was pretty evident that some clients are far more valuable than others. I would venture to guess that many of you are in the same boat, sort of the inverse 80-20 rule. It's not uncommon at all for a small percentage of businesses or companies to sort of generate a disproportionate amount of revenue for your business. I can tell you, it was a heck of a lot more difficult for me to replace General Motors or a Delta Airlines than it was to, say, replace a goVirtualOffice that maybe bought 10 shirts from Lands' End the prior year for a golf outing or something. So it's really difficult to replace those highly valuable companies at your company. And not all customers are treated equally. And it's critical that everyone understand that, from the salesperson to the customer rep to the person fulfilling that order. They need to understand the value of that customer to your business. That's really what INX was looking for: a simple solution available to everyone, visible to them while they were doing their job. One of the challenges that INX faced in this case was they have many parent-child relationships with their customers. They needed a ranking on their customers that included the revenue of all the children rolled up. And then they also needed that parent value stamped on the child record, so it was available to their folks as they were working with customers. Sure, they could have done this in Excel. You know, everyone that could potentially work with a customer could have that file up, and then if they, you know, if the customer reaches out, they could search for that customer and find the information. But that's not at all efficient or scalable. They could have also used a saved search and displayed a list of the top 10 maybe in their dashboard, but you know, then this isn't the client record that the customer service person would be looking at when they're talking to the client. They'd have to bounce out to another screen. Plus the saved search route didn't really provide any historical context where that customer ranked last month or last year. So with that, I'm going to turn it back over to Jared, and he'll talk a little bit about the work we did.
All right, thank you, Terry. Yeah, so let's take a look quickly at the solution profile. And again, our approach to this was put some light scripting in place along with a few custom fields that allowed us to roll up all of that child data, calculate all the revenue based on the invoices, and stamp those values into a field on the customer record. So again, this is a pretty simple customization, but as you'll see in a little bit, provides pretty high value. But let's take a look at some of the core concepts that we used in this customization that kind of help eliminate some of the fear. So the first thing I want to point out is the reliability of the solution. And one of the tenets of development in general, right, is anytime you write any code, you want to use code reuse. You want to use proven components that have been tested and reuse those, because now you don't have to rewrite it, you don't have to retest it. One of the things we're able to do at GVO, because we've been doing this for so long, we've built up a huge bank of a toolbox, if you will, of components and code that we can reuse. It's all been well tested, it performs well. So what you're seeing here in this screenshot is just a quick glimpse of some of the libraries and modules we have sitting in our code repository. And then I have to show some code. I'm a developer, but this is just code showing like something as simple as a record changes, determining if something changed on the current record. That's something you would have to write over and over to use. We just have that kind of built into one of our libraries. We can reference it and use it. So that helps a lot with reliability. The solutions we build for you are leveraging a lot of the things we've already pre-built. The next element of this solution that really provides a lot of value, and especially in this case, is health monitoring. If you think about it, this monthly revenue ranking, the way we implemented it, it's a monthly process. So on the 30th or 31st of every month, like this process runs, it churns through all the customers, looks at all their invoices, looks at child customers, rolls all this data together and stamps it on the customer records. You know, this process needs to be reliable. It needs to run. We need to make sure it runs. So health monitoring of the solution was very critical. And what you're looking at here is just a quick snapshot of the script execution log in NetSuite. The platform itself of NetSuite provides so many tools like this that make it really nice for us as developers to provide information for the NetSuite administrators or even the end users or power users of your system to go and check status and health of the scripting that's in place. So again, because this is only running once a month, we want to know when it runs the next day, hey, if there was a problem, what was the problem? Where did it fail? What failed? So we can quickly fix that and get that process to run so that INX has their revenue ranking. I will say that I don't think we've ever had to go and troubleshoot. It's been very reliable, but we always build in this type of health monitoring. So something to think about as you approach your own customizations. And then the third kind of tenet of this solution that I'd like to talk about is data visibility. So because we know in NetSuite inside and out, we really, even our development staff, we try to use as much natural NetSuite as we can. There are so many features packed into NetSuite's platform, it's almost daunting to try to understand how to use all of them. But this is a good case, the solution for INX, where we knew that we wanted to have the data stamped and stored on the customer record, right? Terry alluded to maybe a safe search. We could go sum up the invoices and maybe calculate something on the fly. But it's very important in this case, we have it stored, because now what you're seeing in the kind of three sections of this screenshot is we have a field stamped right on the customer record. So if a sales rep or somebody at INX is looking at the customer, they can see immediately on their record what the revenue ranking is. And then moving left to right, we have a portlet on the dashboard, on the user's dashboard, where they can see the customer ranking or look up a customer. And then last but not least, throughout the system, we have this kind of quick pop-up view. Anytime you see a customer in NetSuite and you hover over that customer link, you'll get this pop-up, and we can put the revenue ranking right on that pop-up. This saves countless, this is a huge efficiency gain for people working in the system when they need to know, oh, I'm on the phone, I just answered a phone call from this company, and I need to know where do they rank, like, do I want to give them that extra discount because they're a top customer or not? So this has been very beneficial to INX, and I'm going to hand it back over to Terry because he can walk you through some of the ROI and the benefits that INX gained from this. Terry?
Thanks, Jared. So yeah, so as Jared alluded to, what I'm going to do after Jared recaps is I'll go back through the results, right, and we'll share actual numbers with you, kind of full disclosure of what these projects looks like, and kind of recap the benefits that the client saw as a result of doing this work. So this project in particular with INX came in around $4,000. The majority of that time was really around requirements, solution design, script development, script deployment. But we also did, as Jared mentioned, safe searches, dashboards, and of course training. We're able to complete this work in just under 2 weeks. And in terms of savings, we estimate that INX is able to save about $1,800 a month through the direct time savings, not having to bounce around different applications and look for things, but also through efficiency gains. We took a pretty conservative approach here in terms of the benefit, because I think we used 15 minutes saved per employee per day as a result of having all of this data at their fingertips. In terms of the benefit, INX leverages across their business. They don't have to do anything. The scripting does all the work each month, updates all the necessary records in NetSuite, giving everybody visibility when and where they need it. They also use this to reallocate their accounts on a periodic basis, ensuring their top customers are aligned with their with the correct salespeople in their organization. So, for instance, the top 20 goes to the GM, the next 20 goes to the assistant GM. They also lastly use this in conjunction with some work we did for them for their Net Promoter Score process. For those of you that are familiar with the Net Promoter Score, a lot of companies use it to understand, kind of how they're doing with their clients. But with the customer value and the NPS process they have in place, they have the ability to run reports showing what the Net Promoter Score is for a customer alongside that customer value. So high customer rank, meaning highly valuable with a low NPS, you better take some action quick. That client needs some attention. So in summary, INX got what they were looking for: small project, quick turnaround, and a quick ROI on this project. So with that, let's take a look at our next example. So our next example is a project that we did with, I'm sorry, one second. The second example is work we did for Scout Bags, illustrating an example of customization when natural NetSuite doesn't quite fit the bill. Scout Bags, just as background, is based in Washington, D.C. They're known for kind of stylish, portable bags and accessories. Encourage you to check them out if you're unfamiliar with them. The holidays are coming up, as you know. Really, really cool stuff. Scout sells direct to consumers in addition to retailers throughout the country and through retailers throughout the country. Elizabeth and her team have been working with us since their NetSuite implementation in 2017. Some background on Scout. They are extremely customer focused. They historically ran their business through the lens of those customer segments. That's not unusual for sure. I would imagine each of you have customer segments, report on them, maybe even align your business around those segments. But during implementation, it was evident that a different approach was going to be required with Scout. Out of the box department classes and locations just weren't going to cut it. The main issue being class, as you know, in NetSuite is typically a product related concept, and it doesn't play well with a customer record. Scout has a huge customer base, hundreds of thousands of transactions per year, and wholesalers kind of across different verticals across the country. They needed their financial reporting to mimic those customer segments and be aligned with those customer segments. Again, they could have done this in Excel, dump out all the customer orders, done some sort of customer segments in some way, rerun all their financials, but this would take hours and hours every single month, and would be both error prone. And one month I might segment the customer this way and next that way. So they really decided ultimately that they didn't want their employees spending time on non-value activities. And so that's where we came in, and they asked us for some help. Now, regardless how that order gets into the system, hand keyed through an integration or imported through another system, the transaction flows through to the customer, with the customer's class assigned every single time correctly. And with that, I'm going to turn it back over to Jared to talk a little bit about the solution we put together for them.
All right, thank you, Terry. Yeah, this particular solution is a great example of leveraging NetSuite's platform. Thinking back over my career, right, early on when I was working with Microsoft Dynamics or Great Plains Dynamics, a lot of times when you had to extend the system, you needed a developer, and the developer had to get in the database. They had to write custom proprietary code to make the fields work, and it was kind of this very development heavy process to just even add custom fields. One of the great things about the NetSuite platform is they really built it 15 plus years ago, right? Built it from the ground up as a very extensible platform. They had extensibility in mind. And one of the ways they did that is with what they call Suite Builder, okay? And Suite Builder is what allows you to basically add custom fields to the database, an unlimited number of custom fields. You can even create relationships between them. You can create custom data tables called custom records. So our job as developers, as much as we love to write code, our job at GVO is to really understand the natural features that are available as part of the platform and leverage those. And what that does for us is that really helps us keep the system upgradable because we're leveraging natural features. So in the screenshot here, what you're seeing is I just captured the setup screen for a custom field. In Scoutbag's case, obviously, the class needed to now be driven by the customer segment, right? So we needed a field on the customer record to capture the default transaction class to be used further downstream. So again, all this is set up. You don't need a developer to set this field up, and we leverage natural functionality that then is very upgradable. The next part of this solution, again, was still a natural concept. And now we're going to create another field, and this is a transaction body field. So we needed a field on the class, on the transaction, for example, the sales order, that once we selected the customer on the sales order, NetSuite can naturally, using these features, pull the default class from the customer record onto the transaction. Okay. Now we could have had a developer write code to do this, and there's an API to do that. However, this is a great example of how we can leverage the natural tools to provide increased performance. So in this case, we're using a feature called sourcing. And basically that allows us to source or pull a field from another record in NetSuite onto the existing record. In this case, pulling a customer field onto a sales order. And it's a great way. A no-code solution keeps us high performance and very upgradable. And then last but not least, again, I couldn't resist showing a little bit of code. So the next piece of this is probably some of the simplest code we've written. Now, as developers, we look at the overall solution. So a lot of this solution was actually configuration. It was planning and thinking about how the data flows through the system. We were able to do most of that through configuration. But I wanted to pull this code up because this might be one of the shortest scripts we've written in quite some time, just 22 lines of code, and that's with comments. But it's pretty simple at this point because we've already pulled the data from the customer record over onto the transaction. Now we just need to examine our custom transaction body field and the class value that came from the customer. And we need to look at the natural class field that sits on the transaction, compare the two, and set the field if we need to. All right, so the benefit here is quality. To me, a quality solution is one that's easily readable, maintainable. I would argue that even a non-developer could take a look at the script and read the comments and probably figure out what it's doing. Maybe you couldn't customize it or modify it, but it's kind of self-documenting. And that's what we strive to do, and that to me makes a quality solution that can be upgraded and very easily maintained. And also, the simpler the better. If we have less moving parts, that's less things that can break over time, and lower cost of ownership for you as somebody who owns the system. So with that, I'll hand it over to Terry to talk a little more about the actual ROI and benefits. Terry?
Thanks, Jared. As you were speaking there, an idea or a thought came to mind that one of the benefits of, or one of the ways that we at GVO try to make it simple to work with us is, we have internal expertise in-house across development, application, business experience, and so the benefit there is, Jared mentioned, both this was configuration and development kind of working together effectively, and that doesn't happen by mistake. It is a result of our development teams work very closely with our application teams and make sure that we're delivering the benefit that the customer expects and based on the requirements that they provide. So I just wanted to share that as kind of another thought after you were discussing that project. So in terms of the numbers on this project, this was a relatively small project. You could expect to spend between $3,000 and $5,000 to do something similar. We knocked it out pretty quickly. I think it was 2 weeks from start to finish. Making a few assumptions here. If you have somebody that spends 2 hours a week, maybe up to 10 hours a month, don't think that's unrealistic to do this kind of work if you're trying to do it manually. You would be looking at savings of $400 to $600 per month. Not to mention, it just makes everything in everybody's life much easier. The benefits, really all the transactions carry the correct customer segment, regardless of the channel that they came through, every single time. And I know I've said that a couple times, but it's very important. You don't have to, run a report, dump out a group of transactions that are missing a piece of information. It happens every single time. This is also an example that leverages natural NetSuite functionality, class in this case, to enable the reporting and financials to be the way that the client needs and allow them to slice and dice as necessary. There's no manual work required. There's no exporting out to Excel or trying to tag orders manually. And lastly, it's a scalable solution. Doesn't matter if you have 10 orders per month, 10,000 or 100,000 orders per month, this process will work. This is an example, truly one less click. And most importantly, we're able to deliver a solution that fits Scout's requirements, customizing NetSuite to work for them. And with that, let's move on to our last example. So our last example comes to us from IGI, and it's an example of how to use advanced PDF to meet customer-specific requirements. IGI is based outside of Detroit. They're a large-scale commercial AV system. They provide large-scale commercial AV systems, and they've been with us since their implementation in 2016. Their customer kind of reads like a who's who of industry: the Fords, the General Motors, the Hondas, the 3Ms, the NASAs, just to name a few. Not surprisingly, customers of this size have some pretty specific requirements. I know this is probably unique to IGI, and none of your customers have any specific requirements, but just try to bear with me for a second if you could. IGI approached us to see what we could do to avoid them having to create individual or multiple versions of their invoice. Essentially, in their case, it was going to be one invoice per customer. Again, like the other examples, they could have exported this information out into another system or application, manipulated or add the customer required data, slap their logo on it and call it an invoice. There's a couple of problems with this approach. One, the actual invoicing is now taking place outside of NetSuite, and you've introduced multiple systems into the mix, which creates duplicate work at a minimum, but also prone to errors. Another issue is these are some of the biggest fish in the corporate ocean. IGI couldn't afford to not look like they belong, and they didn't want to look like Joe's Video House down the street. As an aside, before I turn this over to Jared, advanced PDFs are probably one of our most common asks. Lots of flexibility. If you have any questions, don't hesitate to ask at the end of the webinar or during the webinar, and we'll answer those at the end, or give us a call after the webinar. We're happy to talk you through it. With that, I'll turn it over to Jared.
All right, thanks, Terry. So let's take a look at an advanced PDF, and I think it's probably worth saying, if you don't know, if you haven't heard the term advanced PDF, what we're really talking about is more or less a report writer. All of the output documents of NetSuite, being a cloud system, come out in PDF format. That way you can email them, you can print them from a PDF if you need to, you can store them in a file system. So advanced PDF is just a technology that NetSuite launched about 4 or 5 years ago that brought a full development suite of tools to the report generation or advanced PDF output. So that when we talk about advanced PDF, we're really talking about kind of a report writer. And it leverages common technologies such as HTML. It's all based in kind of the same language of the web, if you will. But let's take a look at a screenshot. So as Terry was saying, right, one of the key requirements a lot of times when we talk to our clients about advanced PDFs is, I need an invoice that looks this way. This is my invoice. This is the way it's always been. I want it to look like this when I move to NetSuite. Or, it has to look this format because my customers are expecting it. They have systems built to process the invoice based on this format. So this is just an example where IGI you know, they had a very specific format they wanted, and we were able to kind of tweak it and give that professional look that they were looking for. You know, secondly, in IGI's case, they had a very specific requirement in that they were working with these big customers. So what we did in the next screenshot here, you can see that we are actually very data driven. And so what I'm showing here is the way that we made this solution very robust, very scalable by using data-driven and logic-driven advanced PDF output. So this solution is first and foremost driven from the customer record. So as different customers have different requirements, and just, you know, the key requirements were how were items rolled up or rolled together on the invoice. Some customers want to see just more of a summary invoice with things rolled together by item. Some of them want it rolled together by the actual labor type, and depending on the customer, there may be a different preference. So what we did is on the customer record, we've set those values. And actually what we're looking here in the screenshot, I'm kind of pointing to those two columns. This is how we made the solution very scalable, is we pull the data from the customer record onto the invoice or the sale transaction if there's a sales order involved. And it allows the end user at the time of the transaction to override the default settings from the customer. So if there's a case where maybe it doesn't make sense for that type of sales order to have a roll up, they can adjust that right at the line level of the transaction. So this provides the ultimate level of flexibility for IGI, right? They don't have to touch it. It'll come in by default from the customer record. But if they have one-off cases, they're still able to adjust it without having to, you know, call a developer and have us change the code or write very extensive rules in the system. Again, we can keep the system simple, but yet allow the user to override when necessary. And that makes it really nicely a nice solution that doesn't need to be maintained. Last but not least, I wanted an opportunity to talk a little bit about the development tools and process that we use, because development quality code isn't always just about the output of what code gets deployed to your system. One of the critical elements is the process of how we store that code as it's being developed, as it's being modified. And advanced PDF is a good place to talk about that, because it's a really great place where you want to store code as you're developing that PDF, as you're creating that look and feel, because what we find is a lot of times companies want to roll back. You may make changes to the invoice that, oh, we made all these changes, we got some feedback from our customers and they hate it. We want to go back. NetSuite doesn't really have any built-in functionality for keeping version control of your code or your advanced PDFs. And that's why at GVO, we have a proven process that utilizes a source control system. So everything we do, scripting, advanced PDFs, goes into our source control system. And what you're looking at here is a screenshot of our DevOps system. We're looking at this advanced PDF. Not a lot of changes for this, but it tracks who the developer was, when they checked it in. We can go compare version to version what the changes were. If we do need to roll back, we always have this in our backed up repository so we can get you back to where you were. And again, that is when we talk about cost of ownership and long-term maintenance and eliminating some of those fears of customization, source control is a critical element to think about when you start to embark on that customization path with your systems. So I want to make sure we touched on that. So all in all, IGI though, a really good example of how we were able to use advanced PDFs and really eliminate potentially a lot of manual work if they were to do this in Word, Excel, or even other approaches in NetSuite would have had a similar cost, but would have involved a lot more risk and a lot more work. And I know Terry's going to kind of speak a little bit to that as he talks about the ROI and benefits. So I'm going to hand it over to Terry, and he'll walk you through the results of the solution. Terry?
Thanks, Jared. This is also a project that kind of fits into the small bucket for us. Mark's going to share kind of how we view development projects in a bit here, but we wanted to provide you guys some examples of quick hitter kind of small projects that produce ROI immediately. This project again was around $5,000. Can complete in 2 to 3 weeks. The client could have chosen, as Jared alluded to manually create these invoices, using multiple custom forms in NetSuite along with multiple custom PDFs for invoices. We estimated not going the manual route, probably save the client about $600 per month using Excel or some other system. But also in this case, if they would have gone multiple routes, you're looking at $2,000 to $4,000 of incremental or additional setup costs for those advanced PDFs that they would have been using. The benefits, as Jared mentioned, in this case, we were able to meet IGI's requirements and didn't have to create multiple versions. We achieved kind of a brand appropriate design and something that they could be proud of and a scalable solution. As I mentioned earlier, advanced PDFs are probably our most common ask. NetSuite's out-of-the-box documents are sufficient, but let's be honest, from a branding and marketing guy's perspective, they lack a little oomph. And so I've included some examples on this slide of kind of common asks that we get around advanced PDFs. And we can get, we're happy to talk to you afterwards if you have any ideas. So, advanced PDFs, I just want to leave you with, offer nearly unlimited customization opportunities. So again, if you can think it, we can probably do it. So I hope these 3 examples have given you a feel for the options that are available to you, maybe even sparked an idea in your mind in terms of customization work that you might want to take on. Great. We would love the opportunity to talk to you. Mark has an offer that he'll share just in a bit that might make that easier for you as well. So that wraps up this portion of the webinar. And now I'm going to hand it over to Mark to talk a little bit about the GVO approach. Thanks for your time.
All right. Well, thank you, Terry and Jared, for going through those examples. So what we're transitioning to right now is talking about how do we do business here at GVO when it comes to development. And what I'm going to break down to as well is how we look at and estimate out development, some of the different types of development when it comes to small projects all the way up to extra large. There's a lot of different ways that we approach it, and there's a lot of different functionality and tools that we use. So the first thing that I do want to mention too is that our process is built to scale. We have clients that are very small. We have clients that are enterprise. So we have to have a process that is able to scale to their needs. And so that's something that I'm going to talk about first is the 4 core elements of our development project, and just basically being able to understand how that can scale and what are the pieces that are important to us at GVO. So with that, I'm going to jump to the next slide here, and we're going to talk about that approach. And again, I mentioned there's 4 different pieces, and you might be able to guess these as we go along. So the first one, of course, is discover, right? First and foremost, we need to make sure that we are aligned with our clients on their requirements. You heard Jared and Terry quite often reflect on the client knowing what they need to have happen, and that it's a knowledge share, right? It's really about us providing guidance and understanding of what NetSuite can do and how it can be done, as well as you providing your business goals and objectives. And so what comes out of discovery is the different options that we see. And a lot of times with NetSuite's flexibility, and you may have heard this from how Jared was speaking, there's multiple options, right? There's not just necessarily one glove that fits. So in terms of the different options, you'll be able to look at those and also see their estimates and understand what is the best option for you. And it gives you all that education to really take forward what your strategy is and how far you want to go with it. So that discover phase is really quite important. The second, as you may have been able to guess, right, is design. So we need to go into the nuts and bolts of how this is going to operate. What is the option that was selected by the client, and break it down. And design is incredibly important because it is the strategy of how we develop. It's understanding what are the little pieces that are put together to create the overall architecture to have a scalable, long-lasting solution for our clients. And that feeds into all of the historical experience that we have. You saw Jared show some of our information in the repository, some of our best practices. All of that knowledge is fed into our design process. The third, is develop and test. And I specifically call out test in this as well. As you can imagine, development is the hands to keyboard, creating the code. You saw Jared's examples. Those were on the smaller side, but you can imagine there's code that we have that's thousands of lines. And then test. There's so many different variations of tests. And kind of the analogy I use is I wouldn't suggest you to jump into a river without checking its depth. And that's why we test, right? We test to make sure that it's going to, from a QA standpoint, all the little pieces operate as expected. From a functional standpoint, that it fits into the business end-to-end process, right? That at the end of the day, the user experience is there and it's correct. Then there's also UAT, which is user acceptance testing, which you may obviously already be familiar with. And that is putting it to the client's responsibility to run through their test cases and run through their scenarios to be able to understand that, yes, this does work for me. This is what I expected, and this works along the way. So those testing portions are something that we never want to ignore because they make sure in the fourth stage here that we have a very successful cutover. And so that fourth stage, as you can guess, is moving that over to deployment. That's getting that into your production environment. And part of our deployment process is deployment of code is actually pretty quick. But one thing that we also do is going back to that testing thing is smoke testing, right? We want to make sure that we're able to see that it's operating and then also monitor it going forward. So we actually have a monitoring and go live support that we can add in there too for our projects to make sure that you're off to the races in the correct path. So those are the four: discover, design, develop and test, and then deploy. Those are the four different sections. And obviously, as you can imagine, with larger projects, there's a few more different stages in there. We want to make sure that our clients are involved in the design process way in advance, understand it conceptually before we move forward. And there's different sign-off processes that we may take depending on the scale of the project. So that's a summary of our approach to development. What I'm going to talk about next is what we can build. And we showed you examples of small development projects, and that is just scratching the surface, right? That is a small amount of what we are able to do. And how we approach development is we do often see it in buckets, and what you'll see here is small through extra large, and you'll see the hours that are involved. So there's projects that could be a day, and there are projects that could be months, right, for development. And it's about what your requirements are and what you're trying to achieve as a business. So in the small bucket, you're going to see things like simple validation, setting fields, creating notifications, right? NetSuite has natural notifications, but sometimes there's a little bit of a trickier one that you need to go out to multiple different contacts based on this or that, right? That is in that small bucket. Now, in terms of medium, you're going to see different things like validation logic, right? You start to get into more automation of line data. So for those that have worked in workflows before in the past, that's that nice user interface for a potential subject matter expert to go in there and create their own script. I'll put that in quotes. This automation of line data is something that takes that to the next level, right? SuiteScript has more horsepower behind it than you'll see in workflows. So that's something that you'll see in the medium. Also advanced PDF work, right, that we talked about. We shared an example there. Large, you're going to see more process-oriented work. You'll see multiple records being involved, scheduling of processes, simple user interfaces, right? And that user interface thing is an interesting one, right? There's a lot that can be done in NetSuite. How we often approach that is we try to make sure that the user interface aligns to NetSuite. It's always, at times you have to get creative, right? But it's always good to kind of keep that user interface and keep that user experience similar for your team members. And then for extra large, This is where you start to get into larger integrations, more towards custom integrations. You guys may have seen platforms out there like Celigo and FarApp. There's multiple others. Boomi is another one, and Sync, right? There's quite a few out there. So those tools we often use quite as much too, but we'd also do custom integrations as needed. You also see batch processing, complicated processes, very complex user interfaces. You may have heard the term suitelet used before when it comes to NetSuite terminology. That's involving the user interfaces. So that's where we step into extra large. And then double X large is full-blown applications, high volume work, complex integrations, right? You can get into very large scale projects, and some of these pieces are being able to allow clients to have a one-stop shop. And that's where we want our ERP system to be. And so that's where you start to get into, you see full-blown applications. You might be like, well, there's probably a third party out there that maybe does it. And that's often a route that we look at. We always try to look out. We don't try to reinvent the wheel, but there are times where we bring it into NetSuite to be able to give that really clean feel, similar user interface, all in one application, and have your data in one spot too. That's very important when it comes to some of these customizations. So this is the scale, and this is, you see 3 to 4 bullets under each. There's many more things that are involved in each one of these aspects, but this is kind of gives you an idea as to how we scale the different projects. So what I'm going to talk about next is we're going to wrap up and we're going to go into Q&A. And we're going to, in Q&A, I'm actually going to ask Jared to talk about one of maybe the more complex integrations, which we talked about a lot of small ones, complex customizations, because we talked a lot about some of the small ones. And so we want to talk a little bit about the larger ones during Q&A as well. But also take a look at the questions feature in the GoToWebinar and submit any questions or scenarios as we get to there. Before we get into Q&A, I've got a couple more things to talk about. One, as you've kind of heard our attitude through this entire webinar, we are here to help. That's why we do these webinars. One of the things that we wanted to do as a result of this development webinar is we wanted to allow you to take advantage of a free 30-minute call with one of our senior developers. And you might even get Jared to be the one that's talking with you. And you might be asking, like, how am I going to use that? What's the value of that? And it honestly is up to you a little bit, right? You might have a question on a scenario that you see that's, man, I see my team member having to do this every single week, and it takes them hours. How do we remove some of that time? So it might just be a question, or it might just be to talk about some ideas that you have. So you can definitely take advantage of that. And how you do that is you can reach out to us, similar to getting the demand planning recording, but reach out to us at NetSuite Simplified at goVirtualOffice. You guys can see it there in the slide. So with that, I'm going to talk about one more thing, and that's what's up next. So coming in December, we're going to be talking about year-end close, right? The stress of all of the accountants, right? How do we get year-end closed simply done, right? And so there's things that we're going to go through. We've got checklists that we've developed. We have a lot of accountants on staff that are part of our application team and client success team. So they have a lot of that experience. And so if you've got an accountant on your team that's not on the call today, that might be able to take advantage of it, nudge them. We post this on LinkedIn. We send out a lot of emails, as you may have noticed. We try to get in front of you guys so you guys can take advantage of these webinars. So that's what's coming up next. And now let's transition into our Q&A. And as I mentioned, any questions or comments that you've got outside of this, let's say you leave this call and you're like, oh shoot, I should have asked them this question. Go to NetSuite or email us at netsuitesimplified@goVirtualOffice, and we'll be happy to reach out and talk. So with that, let's just start off with the main question. Jared, talk about one of the larger customizations that you've done.
So it's thinking back over the last 10 years, it's hard to pick one, but the one that comes to mind is We have a client that's one of the largest waste handlers in the US, and they have massive facilities that process waste of all kinds. And the division that we work with that's using NetSuite actually has a process where they have to take in a truckload of a waste, and they have to separate that waste into different components. And there's lots of legal aspects to it, and as you can imagine, they have to report because some of these materials are contaminants and things like that. So we had to build a completely custom front-end order entry system to populate a sales order. It integrated with their scale, that the trucks would pull onto the scale, and it would weigh the waste. Then they'd calculate what percentages of the waste was in a 55-gallon drum, for example. And all of that was put into our custom user interface we developed. And from there, split out into very particular lines on the sales order that then was used to generate advanced PDFs that spit out the reports for government reporting and for the EPA and so on and so forth. So it was a very complex design, but something that took NetSuite, something that NetSuite wasn't naturally capable of, and still leveraged a lot of the natural functionality like the sales order and the reporting, but put this just beautiful front end on it that allowed their users to kind of interact with it in a very streamlined fashion and move waste in and out of the facility very, very quickly. So that's probably the most exciting and one of the more complicated ones we've built.
Yeah, and moving waste is not just like a general manufacturing process. You are bringing waste in and then you are separating it, you're moving it to different directions, you're tracking all that inventory. So it gets complicated, as you can imagine, very, very fast. One other one, Jared, that I just thought of too, and it's talking about complex and very long projects. We did have a company, I think we implemented this in 2015 around, but being able to they had software, hardware, and services orders that would come through. And we probably had 5 or 6 integrations through receiving orders all the way through invoicing. And it was almost a no-touch system. It was monitoring, which was really cool. So their orders would come from distributors automatically into their system, and it would flow into a process. And there was validations that we wrote. So any data issues, we'd catch them. Again, only monitoring. They're not entering the orders. They get a notification, hey, here's an order to take a look at. And it would flow, and it would facilitate up to get the licensing from another company and another third-party application. There would be also renewals facilitated at the end for the contract expiration. So there was a lot there. But what was really cool was seeing orders come through their system that they wouldn't have to touch, that would go all the way to the invoice, and the invoice would be sent back out to the customer. Again, no one even touching anything in NetSuite. That was one of the larger customizations that I was involved in, and a difficult one in terms of figuring out the process, all the integrations. But at the end, them being able to just have orders come through their system, be able to trigger the hardware to be shipped out, the licensing to be provisioned, all that stuff, and ultimately have the invoice be sent out and bring in that revenue nice and easy. That was one that came up to my mind.
Yeah, Mark, just to add to that's a great example of, through that project, GVO had to build a lot of tooling. We had to, and we have tools now in our toolbox. We have a thing called record routing and a validation engine we built and a process log tool. So all of those things, moving an order through a system without anyone touching it is something that does require some customization. The benefit to all of you on the call, if you're interested to hear more about that, let us know, because that's some tooling that we already have built that we've used at several client sites that can help automate any of those processes. So again, leveraging things we've learned over the years and built over the years to continue to push forward, helping other companies get nice, robust, low-cost solutions. That's really the heart of what we do. So.
Yeah, and like Jared's mentioning, we are continuously working on standardizing some of our development. So if you're just interested in knowing what we have through our developers, you can reach out to us and ask. You know, there's a lot of different tools that Jared and his team have come up with that eventually we're going to get out there more, probably on the Suite apps, et cetera. But we've got them in a very good place for you guys to be able to take and run with them.
I can talk all day about code and source control and components and strategies for solution development. So that's my favorite topic.
So it might not be just a 30-minute call.
Yeah.
But we'll try to keep it to that. Anyways, I am not seeing any additional questions here listed on the GoToWebinar, and I do see that we are at time too as well. So we're going to wrap up for today, but please feel free to reach out to us at NetSuite Simplified at goVirtualOffice.com, and we'll be happy to set up that 30-minute call with Jared or one of our senior developers to brainstorm, talk about ideas, or think through your next project. So thank you again for attending. And again, next month is our annual close webinar for those that are in accounting. All right, thank you.
Thank you.